Hello, I'm Arindam Chatterjee, Principal Group Program Manager with the Azure HDInsight team here at Microsoft. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules and giving me an opportunity to present HDInsight. Based on your feedback, we have made significant additions to our service that would make it easier for you to meet your business goals quickly and more efficiently. Let's step right in. So as I mentioned, I will be talking to you about how to migrate and operate business critical open source analytics applications using Azure HDInsight. Azure HDInsight has been available to our customers for several years now, and a lot of our customers have built very interesting applications, and more importantly, have extracted a lot of benefits from HDInsight. If you have any questions about this presentation or you need to reach out, please send an email to askhdinsight@microsoft.com. You can also follow us on our Twitter handle at Azure HDInsight. Okay, so today I'll cover what is HDInsight for those of you who may not be familiar yet with HDInsight. I'll be covering what it is at a high level. I'll go through some use cases and the reference architecture. What do our customers who are today on HDInsight, how do they use it? How do they put together an end-to-end solution using HDInsight? I'll talk to you how you can migrate your HDInsight your Hadoop and Spark applications to HDInsight. And last but not the least, we'll talk about how to leverage some of the latest innovations that we have done to optimize and operate these applications on HDInsight. And then we will wrap up with some work that we are doing in the near future that we are looking forward to bringing to you. Okay. So HDInsight.
And I lost your audio. And I lost your audio for a second there. Just go ahead and start with the last thing you just said. And finally, we will blank. And you can just pick it up right there.
Okay. Let me. Oops.
This is an internet lag.
Okay. Yeah, I think there was a glitch on my side. Sorry. Okay. Do you know where I finished off here? Like where it broke off approximately?
Man, I don't. I heard you say about Hadoop, and then after that, the last point that you made, I think it was the optimizing and operating, the last thing you said.
Okay. Okay. Then we'll talk about how to optimize and operate these big data applications that you've built on HDInsight. And last but not the least, we'll end off with some of the work that we are currently working on that we'll be bringing to you shortly over the course of the next few months. Okay, so let's jump right in. So what is Azure HDInsight? Azure HDInsight is an enterprise-ready managed platform for running open source analytics in the cloud. Traditionally, this has been Hadoop or Spark or Kafka, HBase, and application and analytics frameworks like that. But we are looking at adding more and more such engines onto HDInsight in the near future. So HDInsight at its core is about open source analytics. It brings the most popular Apache OSS analytics from data ingestion to ad hoc exploration. You can do data ingestion through engines like Apache Kafka. You can do stream analytics using Storm or Spark streaming, and then all the way to online serving and ad hoc exploration through Apache frameworks like Hive and Hive LLAP. Today, we bring Apache Hadoop 3.1, Spark 2.4, Kafka 2.1, and as you can see, these are all some of the newer applications versions that our customers want to build their latest applications on top of. Because we are open source at the core, it really enables most of our customers who are running on-premise applications, Hadoop and Spark clusters, or happen to be running Hadoop or Spark and Kafka clusters elsewhere in some other cloud, to come to HDInsight with very, very minimal changes. It also enables us to make sure that ISV applications that are built on top of the open source stack can also work very seamlessly with HDInsight. You're also able to leverage all the line of business applications that you might have built over the years and are running, and your businesses are depending on it. You can actually use them in HDInsight with very minimal changes. But HDInsight is also not just about the open source analytics. It's about making sure that those open source analytics are actually running in the context of your enterprise. Your enterprise will have lots of requirements around security, monitoring, cost control, and so on. And HDInsight, we pay special attention to all of those. So for example, we have a lot of scalability and performance improvements that we have done over the years, which allow your HDInsight, your open source applications to run at its optimal when running in the cloud. We offer integration with other Azure services that enable things like health monitoring with Ambari, which is of course an open source tool, but also with Azure Log Analytics. Imagine being able to take hundreds of clusters, HDInsight clusters that are running in your environment, and monitor them all using one single dashboard in Azure Monitoring. We enable high utilization and cost control through features like AutoScale, which I will get into in a little bit. And last but not the least, security. It is a requirement that has really gotten rigorous over the last few years. We cover security end to end, all the way from Azure AD and multi-factor authentication and role-based access control, strong network isolation so that you can actually feel that your clusters are protected from the outside world, and to encryption, end-to-end encryption, from encryption in transit to encryption at rest through customer managed keys as well. So all of these should give you the peace of mind that your workloads and your sensitive data are being protected using the best state-of-the-art technologies. And these innovations that we have done have really, helped our customers across all industry verticals, from manufacturing, financial services, to retail, and many, many other industry segments. Uh, Customers are using it to build really innovative solutions that bring business efficiencies across the board. Customers are also using this to distinguish themselves from their competitors who might not be as data driven as themselves. We are seeing manufacturing customers use customers in the manufacturing vertical use IoT solutions. They will use Kafka and get signals from their equipment all the way to do predictive maintenance and scenarios like that. Financial services companies will use HDInsight with Hadoop and Spark and some of the ML technologies that we offer to build fraud detection and portfolio management and other such scenarios. Similarly, in healthcare, in today's world with the COVID-19 situation that we're all going through, we have seen our customers build really interesting and innovative solutions that get the data that our first responders and the doctors and nurses, what they need in terms of delivering the most important medicines, the most important equipment to the front lines as quickly as possible, all enabled on HDInsight. So all of these customers who today, across all of these industry segments, what do they have in common? If you really take a step back and look at what they're building, they really come down to this one sort of reference architecture, if you will. Different customers, of course, have their own unique requirements and will tweak some of these elements of this architecture. But like I said, all of them really boil down to this particular architecture. So what is it? They will take corporate data that they may be collecting today, or they have some new data sources. They will ingest that batch data. How do they ingest it? Through things like Azure Data Factory, but also there are open source tools like Oozie, Discopy, and other things where to ingest the data. That data lands up in a data lake, which is Azure Storage, typically backed by Azure Storage, Azure Data Lake Storage, etc. Once it's in there, it's processed using Spark, Hive, Pig, all of these frameworks being supported by HDInsight. Once the data is in a more structured format and pushed back to Azure Data Lake Storage, it can then be served up through things like Spark SQL, Hive LLAP, or other technologies like that. Similarly, at the same time, what we have observed is some customers will get real-time data ingestion from through Kafka. So imagine from IoT devices, the data coming through something like Azure IoT Hub and landing up through in Azure in HDInsight Kafka. Once it is in Kafka, it can then be processed and further processed using Spark streaming on HDInsight or even Apache Storm. And again, that data, once the real-time analysis happens, can be stored back in an HDFS compatible store like Azure Storage and served up again through Azure LLAP. All of our clusters expose JDBC or ODBC endpoints so that a plethora of tools like Excel or Tableau or Power BI can all be used to look at and explore the data that is being processed and extracted on the HDInsight cluster. But to manage all of this, the governance is an important part. And that's where integration with other Azure services like Azure Active Directory or Azure Networking, Azure Key Vault, all of these working together to really provide that governance foundation for your HDInsight clusters. So now that you have seen, quickly seen what HDInsight can do, let's talk about how do you get around to it, right? You may have been running an on-premise Hadoop or Spark cluster for several years, and you're thinking of moving to the cloud. How should you go about it? So why do customers move to the cloud to begin with? Of course, they see many benefits to the cloud. Lower cost, total cost of ownership is lower in the cloud. HADR reasons sometimes, high availability and disaster recovery. So they will start to use cloud as a backup option and slowly move their applications to the cloud. There is certainly some level of churn that has happened in the on-premises ecosystem that our customers want to move to the cloud and insulate themselves from this churn. So what we have seen over the years, as so many of our customers have made that journey uh, to move to Insight from on-premises, or for that matter, even other clouds, um, we have seen customers go through three very specific steps. Of course, depending on the customer scenario, they may actually do two of these steps together, but most of them go through these very three distinct phases. First, they migrate. Whatever solution they are running on premises, they want to take that solution and run it pretty much as is to the cloud. Um, the advantage of doing that, of course, is that it is familiar, right? They know what the application they have built. They have the Hive scripts, the Spark jobs, the code all written. They don't want to mess with that. They know that they have to learn about the cloud. And so the fewer changes they have to make, the better it is for them. So the first step is an incremental step to migrate their application to the cloud. Once they're on the cloud, they want to now optimize it and optimize it for security, optimize it for cost control, for high availability. Which region should they be in? Multiple regions? Is it paired regions? There are lots of these kinds of questions that they want to answer and optimize their applications. Once they've gotten to that point where their application that was once running on premises is now running on the cloud with the most optimal security settings, most optimal cost settings, now they start to think about, okay, what's the next step? What's the next version of my application? Can I modernize it? What used to run on hardware, on premises, now they start to look at, okay, can I move to a software as a service type solution in the cloud? And so they will now do a lot of workload separation to drive further efficiencies and really rethink their application. Something that was built as a batch oriented system, perhaps on with real-time analytics data,
Lost
and you
you
really start to
right
think
there.
about.
And down, pause. I
Sorry.
lost you. Is something that was on blank blank systems. That last sentence.
Okay. All right. So I think, yeah, I have a network. All right. So something that was running on premises as a batch-oriented system running a couple of times a day, or a couple of times a day. Now, customers may want to enrich that data, that system, with real-time data that is coming in and getting refreshed every 15 minutes. So they really envision and implement a brand new version of that solution in a step that we would call the modernization step. So migrate, optimize, modernize. The rest of the presentation, I'm going to talk to you about some of the work that we have done recently in the migrate and optimize steps. And in a future presentation, we'll talk about how the modernization step will actually work. Okay, so migration, what do you need to do? Migration is not an easy step. Depending on the complexity of your application that you have running on premises, it involves an assessment and a design phase where you're starting to learn about the cloud, about where you're moving to. You're doing POCs. You're really planning. You're trying to understand what your cost would be in the cloud. You know that it will cost you less, but you still want an estimate of what that total cost of ownership would be, and you finalize your design. Then comes the hard part, migrating all the data. Again, depending on the volume of data, there are lots of different solutions that may be applied. But data migration, and then after the migration is completed, after the data has been moved, you want to validate that the entire data set, with the complete integrity, has actually reached your target. Of course, the code has to move. All the scripts, the hundreds of Hive jobs, or hundreds of Spark jobs, etc., that you've built, or Kafka applications that you've built, all of those need to work on the cloud. So that migration, with very minimal changes, you need to move it there, test it, make sure that the performance is up to your requirements. Once all of that is done, you want to cut over and move to the cloud. Your applications that were running against your clusters that were running on premises now have to target the clusters that are now running on HDInsight or on the cloud. So that cutover needs to happen with very minimal downtime. Most of our customers, what they would want to do is actually have a zero downtime, and that may or may not always be feasible depending on your application, but that's the goal. So that's a fair amount of work, as anybody who's gone through a migration project would know. But we are here to help. We can actually have programs in place. We have programs in place which can accelerate each step of your migration. How? So we have worked very closely with several system integrators. And if there are some SIs that you actually work with, then we can work with those SIs as well. But we have built a system that is supported by SIs and several of our ISV partners who bring special tools and their expertise to the migration project as well. So in the assessment and design phase, in addition to the SIs or bringing Microsoft experience people to help, we actually have a partnership with an ISV called Unravel, who provide application performance management systems. And with their systems, you can actually get an estimate of what it would cost, what should be a capacity that you should plan for on the cloud, and what it would cost. Similarly, in the data migration phase, which itself is a complex topic, we have worked with Vandisco, which is another ISV, to help move large amounts of data to the cloud and keep both ends, both the on-premise end as well as the HDInsight end, both in an active format, so that active form, so that your applications don't suffer any downtime. We also work with Azure Data Box. You can use Azure Data Factory to move your data in different ways to the cloud. And last but not the least, in the cutover and parallel operation phase, again, Vandisco, with its capability of doing active-active on both sides, has been a big help for our customers who want to pull off that cutover with zero downtime. And in fact, a lot of the customers will continue to run both the on-premises as well as the cloud versions for a few days, few months even, while all the applications are slowly switching over from the on-premises system to the cloud. So HDInsight, has everything you need. If you look at, what do people do today in the on-premises stack? They will use Hadoop. They will use Spark or Apache Drill, and several other systems like Storm and Kafka and so on. And HDInsight has all of it. The big difference, of course, is that HD on-premises, you have co-located store, so the storage is actually in the HDInsight cluster itself. Whereas on Azure, we depend upon ADLS or Azure Data Lake Storage or Azure Storage. But in combination, whatever analytics engines that you can think of on premises, we have that available on Azure HDInsight as well. So straight off the bat, it's equivalent. And now, a big announcement that we have made recently is that these Apache distributions that I talked about on the previous slide are now coming from Microsoft. For those of you who know HDInsight, have used HDInsight in the past, know that HDInsight used to have the Hortonworks data platform, or HDP, at its core. And a lot of the Spark and Hive and other distributions came from Hortonworks. But moving forward, and in fact, a preview release is ongoing right now. Moving forward, HDInsight will, instead of offering HDP, will start offering a distribution that is coming from, built by Microsoft and supported by Microsoft. So why did we do this? We wanted to make sure that our customers get a cloud optimized experience that is native to Azure and is smart and simple to use. What is cloud optimized? We want faster release cadences. So as soon as a version of Apache Spark or Kafka appears on Apache trunk, we want to make it available to our customers within weeks and not months. We want to make sure that those Apache projects are optimized from a performance and scalability standpoint for the cloud. We have built some features that I'll refer to later, like Spark Cruise, for example, which allows us to look at multiple Spark job submissions across multiple developers on the same cluster. By being able to compare these multiple Spark jobs, we identify the common portions of the job and not rerun them the next time a third job of this is submitted. So identifying common subqueries and not rerunning that part of the query really enables you to speed up the jobs while also saving cost for our customers. Now, these are some unique innovations that we have done that we want to get in front of our customers very, very quickly. Of course, integration with Azure native services like Azure OAuth, AAD, Active Directory, and OAuth is something that we'll continue to do. And last but not the least, smart and simple. Microsoft has over 10 years of experience operating big data systems. We have learned a lot from it, and those learnings are already starting to show up in our data developer, data scientist, and productivity tools. And you will start to see more of those in the coming months and years. So as I said, we already have a preview of the Microsoft distributions available with HDInsight 4.0. If you're interested to sign up and test it out, please do send me a mail at askhdinsight@microsoft.com and we'll sign up. Later this year, by July, you will start to see this happen by default. But right now, we are encouraging our customers to sign up and try it out. HDInsight at its core is all about developers. Whether they're developers, they're data developers who are working with Hive, or data scientists who are working with Spark notebooks, we have something for all of them. So in terms of tools, we support Visual Studio and and VS Code, IntelliJ, and Eclipse. If you're a data scientist who wants to work with Zeppelin and Jupyter, we have both RStudio as well for our ML services customers. If you're an administrator who wants to not use the UI, but wants to write command line tools and PowerShell scripts and so on, we support Java, .NET, Go, and JavaScript and so on. So all of these tools, we will meet you where you are. You are a developer who wants to write code. You're an administrator who wants to write, scripts to automate your administration tasks. We support all of them equally. And this is a core principle of ours that will continue in future versions of HDInsight. The other question I get often from customers who are on premises is that they depend upon a very rich ecosystem of applications that are provided by the community. So we recognize that, and over the last couple of years, we have worked with an increasingly large set of ISVs to make sure that their applications are available on HDInsight, all the way from data ingestion to visualization and other tools like productivity tools, data catalog, connectors, etc. We have worked with some of the best of breed ISVs out there to get their technologies available, applications and technologies available on HDInsight. In the previous slide, I specifically called out Unravel for their performance and application performance management capabilities, and Vandisco for data ingestion. But there are several other ISVs like Waterline Data, Trifacta, Informatica, and so on, who provide are being used by a lot of our customers with HDInsight. Okay. So a combination of all the things that I talked to you about, whether it is the developer tools or the ISV applications, you use all of that to build your applications and make sure that they build your applications on HDInsight and you're able to operate there. But now, once you've got the basic things working, what you really want to do is optimize and make operational improvements once you're in the cloud. And so there are three main things that our customers ask for: security, performance, and cost control. And I'll go into each one of them. So let's talk about security. It is, of course, a big, deep topic, and we have lots of material here. But what I will call out here is, from an end-to-end perspective, the physical security, infrastructure security, and the virtualized, the VM security, that is something that Microsoft will entirely take care of. So you, as a customer, don't ever have to worry about those two layers. For the layers above it, from a network security standpoint to operating system security, application middleware security, or data access security, HDInsight, in conjunction with partner services in Azure Networking, Azure Firewall, Azure Storage, and so on, provides a lot of different features that enable you to really, when you implement all the features, make use of all of them, you will get true end-to-end security. And again, this is something that we're continuously adding to, as you can see. So let's quickly start from bottom up. Network security. How do you isolate your HDInsight clusters from a network standpoint? We support VNet injection, being able to configure inbound NSG rules so you know who is talking to the cluster, and you can control that. Then outbound traffic restrictions. Once your code, your job has been submitted to an HDInsight cluster, what resources can that job talk to? Being able to restrict that to a known set of approved destinations. We work very closely with Azure Firewall to make sure that that aspect is very easy to manage. Very recently, we have also added the ability to enforce TLS 1.2 for the gateway access. So any client that is talking to an HDInsight cluster, you can not only enforce that they are using HTTPS, but they're actually using TLS 1.2 or above. Now the operating system security. Whenever you create a cluster, you will always create the cluster with the most recent secure base image that Microsoft has to offer. But now once the cluster is up and running and you want to make sure that the OS is patched, we will actually download the patch and make it ready for use on your VMs at a regular interval. However, what we do ask of you is to run a script that is already available to you in our script action libraries, and patch the system at your convenience. If it requires a restart, then it'll restart the VMs at the right time when you can afford a little bit of downtime in your capacity. Then let's move on to the most important things around the app and middleware security. Here, ability to authenticate and do a multi-factor authentication through AADDS, access control through Apache Ranger. For all of you who know what Ranger is, it provides very deep, rich access control policies, data masking, and obfuscation capabilities. All of this is full access to Ranger is available to you for HDInsight. Similarly, for auditing through Azure Monitor Logs or Solar, that's part of Apache Ranger, you can also get audit logs and go review them through that. More recently, we have added, it's still in preview, we have added HDInsight Identity Broker, which enables that MFA technology capability that I was referring. And I'll go into it in a little bit more detail in the next couple of slides. And last but not the least, data access security. Of course, you're using ADLS Gen 1, Gen 2. You can set up access control lists over there, storage firewalls, make sure there is TLS encryption enabled from the HDInsight cluster to the backend store. All of this with data encryption using customer managed keys. So as you can see, end-to-end from encryption, network isolation, identity, all of it is covered in HDInsight. All right, so let's talk about HDInsight Identity Broker. This is a feature that is currently in preview that allows for multi-factor authentication and a single sign-on experience with no password hash syncs required between your on-premise Active Directory and AAD. Just for reference, AADDS allows us to Kerberize or domain join our HDInsight clusters to AAD so that we can actually use Apache Ranger, which is what you would need as a customer to do fine-grained access control policies. Another relatively new innovation that was the feature that has been added to HDInsight is encryption at rest using customer managed keys for your disks on the system. So if you are using Kafka and HBase that you know today are actually using the local storage, then that is something that customers have wanted to encrypt and what we are allowing here. In the past, those were system managed keys, and now we have added the capability for you to specify your own keys that we would use for encryption. Enforcing TLS 1.2, it's as simple as a cluster. You take a pick, and while we do support the older TLS.
I'm sorry. Now, can we try that slide one more time? Enforce TLS 1.2. You're
Okay.
breaking up.
Yeah. I think I don't know what's happened to my network. Okay, we'll start from this slide.
I'd like you to start from this slide. That said, I want to wait until I can actually see you moving in your personal video, because I have a feeling it's going to slow down up until that point when you can move again. Go ahead and talk for me.
Hello.
Okay, I can hear you. I just can't see in the little tiny box at the bottom you actually moving. You're frozen down there.
Oh.
That's okay. Go ahead and pick it up from this slide, and if I hear another glitch, I will let you know.
Okay. All right. Do you think my video is not working? My video is on.
You just came back just now.
Oh, okay. All right. Good. All right. So let's talk about TLS 1.2 enforcement. It is pretty easy. We have added a drop-down box here in the Create HDInsight Cluster Experience. You hit that drop-down and you pick 1.2, and that's it. That's all you need to do. HDInsight from that point on will reject any requests over a lower version of TLS. Starting July 1st of this year, TLS 1.2 will become the default. Go and change it to a lower version if you need for your clients. Hello?
No, we keep it the way it is.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I don't, because again, we're going to be editing after the fact, and 4 glitches in 40 minutes, that's fine by me. So if it happens again, I'll let you know. But just continue from there.
Okay. So should I move to the next slide? I think I was done with this, so I don't know exactly where.
I believe I got everything on this slide as well.
Okay.
If you're confident you did as well, let's go on to the next one, because there wasn't another until there.
Okay. Yeah, let's move on. I mean, I think I got through everything, but I'm not 100% sure. Okay.
I didn't hear any other mistakes.
Okay. All right. So next up, performance. So one of the most important differences between an on-premise cluster and an HDInsight cluster in Azure is that the storage is separated. While the storage and compute separation allows for the customer to independently scale the clusters and gain efficiencies out of it, there are certain scenarios like HBase, which are doing a lot of high volume but low latency writes. It does create some inefficiencies when it comes to high latency spikes and unpredictable performance. This is something that we have addressed in HBase recently through this feature called accelerated writes. What we do is actually leverage premium blob or premium managed disks to write the write-ahead log. And the combination of this allows us to do really large reads with up to 25 times greater throughput and 11x lower latency. We have run the YCSP benchmark to validate this particular improvement. Similarly, through YCSB, what we have also seen is that writes to the premium managed disk, the write-ahead log, has achieved 8x greater throughput and up to 3x lower latency. So you can see that both large reads as well as writes have improved significantly. And so the combination of this has really improved not only the performance of our HBase clusters, but also the predictability of it. So things like online catalogs, scenarios like online catalogs, etc., can really be implemented at a very, very large scale on HDInsight. A quick note about scalability improvements. HDInsight depends upon Ambari as its main cluster management system. And so the Ambari database can become a bottleneck in very high scale scenarios. HDInsight by default provisions an S0 Azure database for our customers. But what we recommend is that for customers who want to use HDInsight for very critical workloads, for very heavy usage that can scale up and down to very large numbers of nodes, etc. For the production environments especially, should consider bringing their own Ambari database. That way, they will be able to scale up or down that Ambari database to whatever they need, while still retaining a level of reliability, the appropriate level of reliability and availability for their clusters. All right, cost control. So as much as big data, especially in the cloud, is cheap, the per unit price is cheap, it does add up. Customers spend hundreds of thousands of compute hours with HDInsight. So what are some of the strategies that you can use to lower your bill? First, consider different VM SKUs. Azure provides a lot of different VMs that are optimized for different scenarios. HDInsight will support most of those VM SKUs. So look out for that. As a reference, an EV3 can be 10 to 20% cheaper than a corresponding DV2 for very similar RAM. So if it is appropriate for your application, you should consider moving to an EV3. Consider going to a different Azure regions. Different Azure regions have different price points for the same VM. So consider if that's a possibility, then we would encourage you to look at that. But apart from lower price, you also want to drive higher utilization. So deleting clusters when not needed is an option. So you can use ADF to dynamically create a cluster, submit a job, at the end of it, delete the cluster. You can write scripts to automatically detect what the cluster state is and then delete when it is idle. We are working on features such as auto delete to help you with that. You can also scale the cluster up and down depending on your requirements. So we already provide a resize API that you can use There are UI capabilities that you can go and manually scale the cluster up and down. But more recently, about 6-7 months ago, we introduced in GA the AutoScale feature. This, as I will explain the next slide, helps you control the size of your cluster based on your load or a schedule. Very, very easy to set up. You go to the cluster, you specify that you want to enable load-based AutoScale. You specify a min or a max. In this case, 3 to 10. And once you're done, that's it. HDInsight will monitor the memory usage, outstanding tasks, and other metrics like that to determine whether you need more nodes or less nodes and scale down or scale up accordingly. You can also decide that you don't want to depend upon the load characteristics of your workload. Instead, you want a schedule. You know that your data scientists or your data engineers will come to work and start their work at 9 a.m. every day. They will scale down, go home at around 5 or 6 in the evening. But then for some nightly jobs, you need to start back up at, let's say, 11 and through, let's say, 2 in the morning. You can set up that schedule. You can say at these times, I want these many nodes. So, at 9 a.m., you might need 100 nodes. 5 p.m., you scale it back down. At 11 p.m., again, you scale it back up to what you need, and then scale it back down once the bad jobs, nightly bad jobs are completed. So you've got full flexibility to set up AutoScale for your environments. Today, we support that for Apache Spark, Hive, MapReduce, and LLAP cluster types. Once you've set it up, you can actually go and monitor what's happening and keep adjusting what you need. So number one thing, of course, is that you're paying only for what you need, and not, you're not provisioning your cluster for peak requirements. But by being able to monitor, and you have convenient graphs there, as you can see on the bottom left of your screen, by being able to monitor your cluster requirements, you can further fine tune when you apply how much capacity, and you can fine tune your balance between your cost and your performance. What we have observed through an extensive preview period and even after GA, customers have been able to save more than 50% of their total bill by using AutoScale. Last but not the least, let's talk about modernization. So you will hear a lot about, if you haven't already, about Azure Synapse. That's our premium service, data warehousing service that we have released on Azure. It provides a lot of features around ingestion, prep, exploration, etc., all combined into one seamless experience. Our customers, HDInsight customers, want to also use open source tools to do a lot of that functionality. But it's revealing, giving you the full control, and you make the choices. So imagine being able to take the best of open source that's available through HDInsight and being able to combine that with the seamless experience and advanced data warehousing capabilities in Azure Synapse. That's what we see our customers starting to use as Azure Synapse heads towards general availability later this year. So Azure in totality, Azure is the ideal cloud for all sorts of data analytic workloads, whether you're using open source in HDInsight, Azure Synapse, or Databricks and other technologies that are available as part of Azure. There is, of course, a lot more to it that we will go into in other presentations. So a quick summary of what we have done in HDInsight. In the last few months, we have previewed Apache Kafka REST proxy, AutoScale, and multi-factor authentication that I talked to you earlier. We have taken to general availability Spark 2.4 and Kafka 2.1, performance improvements with HBase, AutoScale, and then the ability to restrict outbound security, bring your own Ambari DB, etc. But there is a lot more to come. So please stay tuned, engage with us, engage with your Microsoft account teams that may be assigned to you. We have a lot more to come, and in all areas. So whether it is in open source analytics, where we are going to continue to roll out the Microsoft distributions for Apache Analytics projects, updated versions of Apache Spark and Kafka, platform improvements that give you even more availability and reliability guarantees, uh, lower pricing for sustained use that you might be looking for, and lots more in terms of manageability improvements, being able to really manage workloads, large workloads over hundreds of clusters. And last but not the least, enterprise security. That is a continuing area of investment for us, has been for a couple of years now, and will continue to go there as we bring more network isolation of HDInsight clusters and resources from the public internet, and stronger encryption in transit, stronger and deeper encryption in transit for all traffic. So I'll end today with some links. Of course, the service overview, documentation, and blogs. But I especially want to call your attention to the last link there, the Microsoft Learn. There are a lot of self-paced labs and documentation that is available there as well. We have a lot of resources on GitHub that is also available if you just look up on GitHub for HDInsight. I hope you've enjoyed the presentation. I know that you have a lot on your minds as all of our friends, family, and community go through some unprecedented challenges. Every minute of your time is precious. So thank you again for staying with me through this presentation. If you have any questions whatsoever, please feel free to reach out to me or contact us at askhdinsight@microsoft.com or on Twitter via Azure @AzureHDInsight. Thank you and stay safe.